Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Dan Cusack from Revive Landscapes and Living Walls. Dan is a landscaper from the ACT, and one of the questions I meant to ask him in the episode, which I didn't, was about the amount of work he's done with the CEO Sleep Out. So that's where he raises money for the homeless by sleeping out overnight. And I know the one in Victoria is at the MCG, so sleeping outside for that. So doing that in Canberra is quite an effort. So it shows you the type of person he is. But we talk more about landscaping in this episode, and he talks about how good the industry is, and especially he's got a group all in Canberra who look after each other. And we also talk about how he started off in the business, working his way up to where he is now with his small team, doing some nice projects. So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Dan Cusack. Dan, thank you for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. The first thing I would like to ask you is how you got into the landscaping industry.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate. Very humbled. I've done my research and listened to some of your past ones. You got some really interesting gardeners who've done a lot of stuff, so it's nice to be among them. So thank you. Nice to meet you. How I got started, I guess it was a weird kind of rabbit hole I went down with YouTube, and I ended up on worms. So I ended up watching stuff about how worms work, which led into compost, which led into veggie gardens, which I guess went into gardening. And at the time, I was doing what I thought was basically my dream job at the time. I was sort of helping organise live music gigs in Canberra at the University of Canberra. And that was after studying music business. And I guess after a couple of years of that job, I just realised it wasn't really going anywhere. So I wanted to get a trade and something I could turn into a business. And I thought, being outside, the diversity of landscaping sounds interesting. So I sort of dove into that, and yeah, it's been good. So that was, I guess, about 10 years ago now, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, there's not really any form behind it. I guess it was just an interest that I've followed and kind of pursued ever since. So that was mine.
So how did you start into it? Did you get an apprenticeship with someone?
I mean, I was in my mid-20s at the time, and I worked with Matt from Blades Landscaping for 10 months. And then it was coming up to the end of the financial year, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have a crack. So I started my own business after 10 months, which I wouldn't advise to anyone. But I, rather than taking the hit and doing an apprenticeship, I actually just did the night tech. So I went to sort of, night teching. It's like 4 or 5 hours a week, twice a week or something like that for 3 or 4 years. So I could still be on site 40 hours. So I sort of hustled away and got qualified, but I did the Cert 3 in landscape construction, and then another year you get a diploma in horticulture here in Canberra. So I did it all at night, sort of as an extra, so I could be on site to develop my skills, because I still had a lot to learn, obviously.
I feel like I say it in nearly every episode, but you do learn a hell of a lot more being on site rather than you do at TAFE. And so,
for sure. And I mean, while I say I wouldn't really advise anyone starting a business or going out there after 10 months, I learned quick, and that's sort of how I do learn. I sort of throw myself in the deep end, and I think that the key is to be honest with your clients and yourself about your capabilities, be willing to push it a little bit, and then just rectify any errors, really. And I've basically done that for 10 years, I think, and I'm sure we all have, but it's just like slowly edging your confidence, isn't it? You just have a crack at something, get it done. All right, I can do that. What else can I do? And talk to people, and just keep learning and growing. So I've been doing that for 9-10 years, and I still feel like there's so much to learn. It's a massive field. And that's sort of why I chose it. It can be a bit overwhelming at times, and you can be like, why didn't I choose something a bit more niche? But here we are. So,
Yeah, like you say, even people who have done the traditional path of doing an apprenticeship and working for someone for a few years, and then they go out on their own, they still end up making up things as they go and learning as you go, because you don't know everything as soon as you finish. So it's and I
think that's right. And I remember when I went out on my own, I had this romantic idea of, I'll go work with a brickie for 3 months, and I'll go work with a carpenter for 3 months, and I'll go work with a stonemason, and I'll get all these really good skills. But that just doesn't work in practice. Instead, I was weeding gardens and doing ridiculous paving jobs on my own and just working my absolute guts out. And I think I was charging out like $35 an hour when I started, or something like that, something ridiculously cheap, and wondering why I was getting nowhere. And just the way you grow and what you learn, I guess, it's just experience, isn't it?
So since I've been following you on Instagram, you've changed your name from Revive, is it Revive Landscapes to Revive Landscapes and Living Walls? Did you start out as Revive Landscapes?
Oh, I think I was Dan Cusack Landscapes for a couple of years because I understood the importance of, like, I wanted to find a name that I gelled with. And then, Revive Landscapes came up, and I sort of jumped on that because I thought it was a pretty good way to encapsulate what we do as landscapers, I guess. We try and, revitalize the spaces and whatnot. So bring them back to their former glory or to something that's usable. And then the living walls was something that I just sort of tagged on, to be honest, probably to keep myself accountable as much as anything, because I found interest in it and wanted to sort of dabble in it a bit more. So I thought, well, if I start putting it out there and see what comes back, and it's been tricky, I'll be completely honest. I'm sure you've probably learned this over the time. It's an expensive item, and not many people can justify the expense, basically. So I've had a bit of fun with it. I've definitely done a few projects that I'm really proud of in the living wall space, and I will persist with it. But it's been a big reality check where I'm like, look, it's just a bit of a side hobby. I can't really and don't want to rely on it as a main income. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, but I don't know whether it's like with anyone watching the video, you'll see that's the vicinity green wall you got behind you.
So this one, it's funny. I've had to raise all the plants off the bottom because during lockdown we got my partner and cat have moved in, so I had to lift all the plants from the bottom so the cat didn't get them. But yeah, this is the vicinity system, and this unit, Matt from Addicted to Gardens in Sydney, I met him at a show in Melbourne, I think, and he basically came up with these portable units. And you're right, it's the vicinity system that just clip on these rails, and it's quite good. But my favorite is probably the Greenwall Solutions do a different system, or it's like a scale system, I guess, which is I've got outside, but it's too cold out there. But they got a bit more of a backing sheet and smaller pots, and I just feel like they both have pros and cons, but they're the two that I've found over my years of kind of dabbling around that I like the best. But yeah, this one seems to work okay. It's just if any of the pots sort of don't line up perfectly, or certain things can go wrong where the plants can struggle or die, basically, which is, I guess, the whole challenge of green walls. But yeah,
I found the cost of them is more in the plants as well. But when I've been quoting them, there's so many plants that go into it, you don't realise. Like, that's where most of it goes to.
I think it's 45 a square meter or something like that. It's 45 plants, so yeah, that adds up pretty quick. And so that's why, like I said, reality check. I just look at it as a bit of fun at the moment, and it's nice to have them around the house. And I put some in at my office for a couple of clients. We did one that was on Grand Design's project. We put a pretty big green wall in a sort of a sunken courtyard there that did pretty well. I helped out Ed from Greenwall Solutions do some at the airport. We put another one in at a owner coffee office soon. So it's, to be honest, I'm really not making any money. If anything, I'm going backwards with it. But you know what it's like, mate. It's like
it looks nice.
You get that spark of interest, and you just have to pursue it. You're like, I got to give it a crack. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, and I've got the joy of sort of having a few around the house, I guess, which is always nice. So.
Yeah. So apart from that, do you do design and construction, or how is your business set up?
Yeah, so I've never had the flair for design. I think I definitely, would tell clients that my skill set's definitely more in the project management, construction, and I sort of would say that we work a bit more like a builder, I guess. So I'll engage various landscape architects because I just acknowledge that that's a whole university degree. Their brain and their spatial awareness and their plant knowledge is far better than mine. Even their ability to sit still and focus on one task is probably a lot better than mine. So I engage them for that. And then basically once the design comes back, we can run with it then. I can price it up. We can project manage it really well, make sure it's built well, make sure all the details are spot on, and all the horticultural stuff like the soil, make sure the soil's spot on and stuff like that. So yeah, design and construct business, but I basically subcontract out the design to trusted designers here in Canberra and architects that I really admire and work really closely with. And that's something that I actually look back through an email, and it was after 1 year in business, I kind of, probably one of the best things I did was I actually reached out to a bunch of designers through Aldam and just introduced myself and just said, I think there's some mutual benefits we can have from working with each other. I admire what you guys do and the skills you have, and do you want to have a chat? And probably one of the luckiest moments. Dom Galloway of Garden Space responded, and he was starting his business at the same time. He came onto site a couple of weeks later, and I think we've worked on 100 projects or something since, probably. So that was a great initiative, I think, that I took back then, and I still feel like I'm preaching every day though on the importance of design and trying to get clients to justify the expense. But it's basically my way of vetting clients at the moment, and has been for the last few years. I basically just say, look, you need a design to work with us. These are the reasons, and this is roughly how much it costs. And I don't know, I reckon maybe 20% of people take up on it, and others will be like, oh yeah, I'll get back to you, I'll just talk to the wife or I'll talk to the husband. You just never hear from them. So it's tricky, but I do honestly, and you know this, I do stand by that you need to have a design. Like if you want to get any sort of result or have any smooth process, you can't do it without having something on paper, and ideally a professional engaged to get you the best results. So yeah, that's how I operate, I guess.
Yeah, and those 80% that aren't getting back to you, they're just going to waste your time with the quote anyway, and then won't get back to you. So
exactly,
you're saving that time.
100%. And I've become resentful, to be honest, over the years of the amount of site visits I've been to and the amount of hours, as I'm sure we all have as landscape business owners, the amount of hours you'll do for free, and nothing comes of it, and quite often you don't even hear back, which is one of my pet peeves. I just wish clients would just send you that email and just say, look, thanks for your time, but I'm not going ahead now, or I'm going with someone else. But instead, you just kind of get left in the lurch quite often, which is extremely frustrating and disheartening.
Yeah, I always email back to people when they let you know, saying thank you so much for letting me know.
Me too. Yeah. I just missed out on a job yesterday. It was a $90,000 residential job, but the client had some really nice comments, which I really did appreciate, because they didn't have to say that, and they did say they went with another contractor. It was pretty much based on price, but they were really impressed with the professionalism, and they would have loved to have gone with us. But and that's all I need to hear. It's just nice to have that feedback. So
now, with you mentioned Aildon earlier on, you wouldn't be a member of them, I'd assume? Do you have to be a designer to be a member of them?
I think so, yeah. But again, Don Galloway, he is a member, and he is spoken quite highly. And I've been to a couple of workshops with him. I think he went to the Adam Robertson, I think it was like a styling workshop or something. And I went to the one they held yesterday about designing remotely. So every now and then I like to keep engaged. I just like keeping across the industry as best I can, I guess. But yeah, not a member of Adam. And to be honest, I don't know a lot about what they do. I feel there's only so much information I can try and retain in my head, so I just leave that to the designers and just try and do what I can.
So, are you a member of the LNA, the Landscape Association?
Yeah. Have been for a few years now, and it's a unique one because it covers New South Wales and ACT. Obviously, Canberra being a little dot in the centre adds some challenges. We're basically a regional city amongst New South Wales in many ways. But yeah, I've been a member of the TLA, they are now, the Landscape Association, for a few years now. And I remember probably 6 or 7 years ago, I kind of articulated an email to them saying some room for growth I thought they could do in ACT. And they basically said, oh, thanks very much, Dan. Like, would you like to join the board? I was like, I don't even know what that meant, but yeah, sure, I'll give it a crack. So I had a crack at that for 3 years, and kind of went up to Sydney to some of the meetings and the members meetings and the board meetings, and yeah, put my best foot forward. And I've stepped back in official capacity now, but I help out Marty, our Canberra board member, where I can. But that's been a fantastic experience. I think, if nothing else, one of the biggest things I love about this industry is the people in it, whether it's other landscapers or suppliers or whoever it is. And me going to Sydney, I made some really good friendships with other landscapers there, and obviously being a bit more involved in the association was a great experience too. So yeah, I think it is. The association does a good job. It's a tough job, particularly in ACT where we don't have licensing. I assume you do in Victoria, do you? Or
yeah, right. I assumed you'd be the same as New South Wales.
Mate, it baffles everyone. It's so strange. And to the TLA's credit, they have pushed for it. They've lobbied for it, but for whatever reason, it just won't get across the line. So that is, and right or wrong, why I was able to start a business after 10 months of landscaping with no qualification yet. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, but it does make it, I think, a bit harder for the association to push the level of professionalism, I guess, when, I mean, anyone can really join. But yeah, so I mean, they do a great job, I think, and lately they've been really good at keeping us abreast with the ACT lockdown and what's going on. So yeah, definitely appreciate having them around.
It sounds very similar to our situation being we're in Geelong, which is an hour out of Melbourne, and Landscaping
Yeah,
Victoria is in Melbourne, so all the events are in Melbourne. A vast majority of the members are, so
yeah,
it does seem like it's all
tough.
concentrated around Melbourne, like the TLA
Yeah.
would be around Sydney. But
How do you find that in Geelong? Like, do you have a sort of a good little community there or of members?
yeah, like I think it's pretty similar in most areas in the landscaping industry, where it's not a ruthless industry to be a part of. Like, everyone looks after each other. If you're booked out for
Yeah.
months, you give work to other guys if they haven't got
Yep.
any, and work with
Yep.
designers, and so like I never feel like I'm competing against anyone, even though technically you are. But it's it's also helps that there's so much work going around that if you miss out on a job, you don't care because there's
Crazy at the moment.
coming.
Particularly in Canberra, I think we got really lucky in the first, 12 months ago during that first COVID outbreak. We didn't have to lock down, so I think all that happened was people were just getting all this money saved up, and I don't know if it's the same with you, but yeah, so there was just people throwing money around at home renovation, and yeah, everyone is just so flat out. It doesn't make it any less stressful, but you just got to take on what you can. But as you say, it definitely helps the competition. And yeah, I feel like we've got a really good community here in Canberra, and I imagine it's probably similar across states and just around Australia. But I do really think landscaping attracts really down to earth people and really genuine kind of folk. I do often sort of reflect on, I should have chose a different trade like Sparky or plumber or something, but I just don't think I would have had the same experience. Like, I don't know, I've got nothing to sort of float that off, but I am very thankful that I chose landscaping, and it does seem to be a great bunch of people. So we've got a bit of a group chat happening at the moment with some ACT landscapers, and we're all kind of checking in on each other and
Awesome.
just sharing how we're going and whatnot, which is, it's lovely. It's really nice.
Yeah, and like when you said before, it's having a massive amount of work is still just stressful. I articulated it for the first time to a client the other day, and as I was talking, I finally understood why that was, or why I think it is. And it's because we've got so we're booked out for, I don't know, we're not taking on any work, so we're booked out halfway through next year. And this, like, if you didn't have work, you know that like there's stress from not having work, but you know that you could get that in a couple of days. You might get work. But whereas when you've got too much booked in, all that work has to get done, and there's nothing's going to change that. So that's why I think it might be just a stress.
Yeah, and you also miss out on opportunities that might come up, because there is always jobs that pop up and they say, I need it done by Christmas, or within 2 or 3 months or whatever. And sometimes they can be really cool projects. So I always try and keep my lead time around 2 or 3 months, because by engaging more subcontractors where I can, or employing more staff. But that isn't that interesting. I think that experience of being comfortable not knowing what jobs you have coming up, like in your early days of business, the anxiety around, like, shit, I've only got 2 weeks work, like, what am I going to do after that? Like, that's a real thing. And I that took me years to become comfortable with, and it's still not 100%, to be honest. Like, yeah, I've probably got 3 or 4 months work booked, but there's still that in the back of your mind, like, oh shit, what if I don't have work and my staff, what am I going to do? Like, and but yeah, it's just part of running a business, isn't it? And it's just something you have to get comfortable with. But yeah, we're in a very fortunate position at the moment, but it's still stressful. But we obviously all signed up for this, so I'm not going to complain.
That's it. There's plenty of people in worse situations than what people in the construction industry are. So how many staff do you have?
Look, I've gone up and down over the years, but at the moment I've just got the 3 on site and myself. And that seems to fit pretty well. I actually enjoyed listening to some of your previous speakers, and I think Ash mentioned about you either stay small and boutique or you go really big. And I was like, I actually think he's on the money there, because I'm sure everyone's tried this. We all sort of think, I want to have 2 crews or 3 crews, and really try and get through these projects because I've got all this demand. And you just, I don't know, in my experience, only 12 months ago, I had an office manager, I had 2 trucks, 2 machines, the whole setup, trying to have 2 crews running. And I just found it more stressful and less profitable. So for now, having just 3 guys on site, I might try and find 1 more, which is, as I'm sure you know as well, very difficult to find, keen staff. But that seems to work okay at the moment. I think, like, it's it's enough to get by. We all know that landscapers don't make millions, but it's enough to sort of pay the bills and live a comfortable life and not be overwhelmed, I guess, or stressed. So I'll probably stick with that setup for a while, I think.
Yeah, I think I heard, I think it was Steve Taylor from Cos Design on his episode that he did with on the Front Garden with the Landscape in Victoria podcast. He said that unless you have, I can't remember if it's 15 or 20 guys, you don't have enough, you're not generating enough income to justify having like a business manager or someone to organise things. So that's what the main issue is. But I'd love to hear from someone who's got like eight staff and have been doing it for a while and it's working well, or 8, 10 or whatever, somewhere in that middle range. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah, I agree. And I'd be interested to hear how you sort of operate yourself. But I basically burned out in the early years because I was trying to be on site for 40 plus hours a week. And then, the typical come home at night, trying to respond to emails and do quotes. And then on Saturdays, all day, I was doing consults, and it just exhausted me. And I wasn't really making that much money because I was just, I don't know, whatever reason. And then in the more recent years, I've basically made a decision that I'm not going to be on site anymore. Like, I'll check in, I'll quality control, but I'll enable my staff to basically just empower them to run it and trust them. And that's been so much better for me. So I'm basically in the office all day. I actually I watched one of your YouTube videos on the life of an unorganized landscaper or something. I thought it was quite organized, mate. That was very good. But that's our day sometimes, isn't it? Like, as business owners, I think you can spend the whole day being busy, but not necessarily being profitable. But it's just what you have to do. Like, you can't foresee all those sort of little things that pop up. You can have the best intentions at the start of the day, and then you're putting out fires or returning to jobs for things that you couldn't foresee or whatever it is. But I'm in a position now where I've got a very small team of 3, but essentially I'm not on the tools anymore, because when I am, my brain's just in office. Like, I'm thinking, shit, I should be working on that quote, or I should be organizing this or working on that. So yeah, that's sort of the setup I've found at the moment. And I know it's not super profitable, but like I said, I feel like my mental health is better for it. And, I don't really work more than 45 hours a week, I would say, which I'm comfortable with. I'm much more of a sort of lifestyle balance kind of guy. And that's what's important to me, I think. So trying to find that balance is tricky, but yeah.
Yeah, I've got a guy who's been with me for 6 years and one who's been with me for 4, I think. And then a third-year apprentice as well. So they're pretty capable of looking after things when I'm not there. So I try. My goal to do is to be like, I'll be on site 2 days a week and then organise stuff the other 3. Because when I'm on site doing stuff, I can get a lot done. Because I can I think really focus on that.
I agree, and it's nice, isn't it? It feels like, without sounding patronising to the staff, like, it feels easier sometimes. Like, it's easier to just jump in a machine or lay some pavers or dig some plants in or something, rather than sort of having 10 things on your brain and trying to juggle all these things. But I think it's important too to be on site with your team, to sort of to bond with them, but also see how they work and just be in the trenches a bit. So I am and always have been trying to get on site. Like you said, that's a great goal. I think a couple of days a week. I think it's essentially, if you look at yourself as free labor, it's a good way to sort of get some free labor back. Good way to progress, get your brain in the game again. But it's just every week, I just never seem to have those 2 days free. So it's hard.
I'll end up spending. Yeah, and I think that's, again, going back to being an unorganized landscaper. You end up sort of doing you'll do 2 days, but it's spread over 5 days. So then you're spending more time traveling and it's not productive. So I think it's just trying to be organized so that you can do all your running around on these other days and then do your work on those 2 days, so that actually you're doing 100% of what you're wanting to be doing.
Yeah, agree. And you've got enough work in Geelong to keep you busy, I imagine.
Yeah.
Just in that Geelong area. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the population of Geelong? How big is that region?
250,000.
Yeah, cool. So Canberra's like, I don't know, a little less than double than that. But yeah, it's definitely big enough, obviously, to keep us busy. And we've got some surrounding regions, but traffic in Canberra's nothing, like 20 minutes to get anywhere pretty much. So yeah, we're pretty lucky here. It's a good community. It's a good size. I could not imagine working in Sydney or Melbourne CBD, particularly Sydney. Like, I just, hats off to any landscapers in Sydney City. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, I think they need to be a lot more organised, because than what we do, because if we need some soil, I can just jump in the truck, drive to the yard, go and grab it.
Yep.
And it's not a big issue. But yeah, up there, and we can just park on the street, whereas a lot of those streets there's no parking on them. And,
no, it'd be a nightmare. Access, like really steep blocks, like just the whole thing. I don't know. Yeah, hats off.
Yeah. But yeah, the traffic is a nightmare when we work in Melbourne. There's one job, so to get to most of the jobs in Melbourne, it's usually like an hour and a half in the morning, in kind of peak hour traffic. But there's one job we did I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but it took us 4 hours to get home one night from there. So it's not what you want at the end of the day. Just because it just
ready for bed by the time you get home, man. Yeah. No,
but we've been working
on
we've been working in lawn along the Great Ocean Road. So that's an hour.
Oh, cool.
An hour trip, but that's an awesome trip, and it's an hour every single time because there's no traffic. So I don't mind driving if you know exactly how long it's going to be.
I agree, and if you're going to be stuck on a road, you may as well be stuck on that one, I guess.
Yeah, it's not a bad one. Yeah. And I was interested when right at the start of the interview, you said you worked in music, something to do with music, and it reminded me. I reckon you were doing music in the background of your Instagram stories before it was possible to do music in your stories.
Oh yeah, you could. Yeah, you're right. So you used to be able to, if you had Spotify playing on your phone, they've changed it now, probably royalties. But you used to be able to have a song playing, and then you could film, which was great. It gave you a bit of.
I wondered how you did it.
Yeah. So now they've trapped it down, and it's just horrible now. Like if you've got a business account, you've got the most ridiculous music to choose from. I don't know if you've still got yours set up as a business on your Instagram.
No, change it to a creator or something.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Because I couldn't do it. Yeah, because you could just choose rubbish music that no one's ever heard of.
Oh, it's horrible.
So I looked into it. Yeah, and you change it to creator, and then you can choose the actual songs people know.
Oh, there you go, mate. Look forward to my Instagram stories getting back. Thanks for the tip.
And you mentioned a couple of things beforehand. Before we started the interview, you're going to be doing work with Greg from Outside Space. What are you doing with him?
He started a bit of a pool. I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but I'm sure I am. But he's doing some pools as well. So he's had some opportunities to do some pool installs here in Canberra. So he wants to sort of engage me as a local contractor to sort of chat with the architects and various people and just run the projects for him, which I think would be really great because, as I'm sure you know, he's an amazing guy.
Yeah.
And he's been a great mentor for me. And I think he was a vice president of the Landscape Association before I was involved. So we've had some good chats about all that. And yeah, he's just, we've become good mates. I've met his family and he's come and stayed here a couple of times. And yeah, just a really lovely bloke who's extremely generous with his time. So yeah, that's another sort of, great thing that's come out of me being a bit proactive, I guess, and putting my hand up to be involved in associations and just going to meetings and stuff like that. So I strongly encourage anyone out there to, I'm sure they do if they're listening to this sort of podcast, but yeah, be proactive to get involved in the industry they're in, whatever that is, because you just meet some fantastic people. And I've heard that theme in a lot of your podcasts as well, which is really refreshing. And I mean, that's why we're all here, isn't it? Just to make friends and hang out. So it's it's been really nice.
Yeah, that's one of the a great answer for when people ask, what do you get out of being a member of the association? And it's 100%. Going to the meetings and making those contacts like that.
Yeah, and I think you get out what you put in, if that makes sense too. I think there's a lot of people that will sort of sit back and say, what's the association doing for me? And it's like, the point I make to them is you can't just expect it to roll out everything for you. Like, you've really got to get involved and volunteer in committees if you can, or just turn up for meetings and, go to webinars. And yeah, if you want to get stuff out of it, you've got to be willing to, put a bit of time in and a bit of work in. So I try my best to practice what I preach there, and I feel like I am getting a lot out of it. So yeah, I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, when I'm generally a quiet person, but so I don't like going to meetings or like just meeting random people and starting up a conversation.
So you start a podcast instead?
Yeah, Anyone who knows me can't believe that I'm doing a podcast, but I talk about landscaping until the cows come home, so I like doing that.
Yeah.
But I decided to get out of my comfort zone and go to meetings when the Landscaping Victoria were having them actually in person. And that made a massive difference. So then, you meet, because I wanted to be the number one landscaper in Geelong that Melbourne people refer to. you're not going to do that just by
100%.
wanting it to happen. You've got to go out and make it happen, and it has happened.
Yeah, and those half-hour conversations, not even 10-minute conversations, can go so far. I remember in my first Sydney meeting that I went to, I'm probably similar to you in some ways. I was 100 members that I didn't know, and I went to the Sydney board for the board meeting, and I hung out for the members meeting afterwards. I knew no one, and I was just standing around. I remember Joel from BTM Exteriors, he sort of just saw me there standing. He had a chat, and we ended up forming this fantastic friendship. Like a few months later, we traveled around Tasmania together for a couple of weeks over the Christmas break, and we've kept in touch, and went to his wedding, and that was just off a random encounter. So I definitely encourage people to go. But have you guys got your own like Geelong meetings and stuff happening, or no? See,
Nah.
that's tricky. That's hard.
But,
so you really do have to travel over an hour.
Yeah, but like everything's all webinars now. But even back, it was a long time ago. Landscape Victoria used to have like it was like a trade show kind of event thing, and they would do it in Geelong, and like not many people ended up going to it, so it might be different now. But they also put on they did like what they called a regional roadshow by going, like putting on like a pot and a palmer kind of thing for people in all the different regional areas around Victoria to try and drum up membership.
Cool.
And there was a few people who went that. I don't know if they had many sign up, but I was kind of part of getting people to try and go to that. So I've never been on the board or anything, but I've done a couple of little things to try and help out, because I love being able to make the industry more professional than what it is.
Yeah, I can tell. Passionate about it. They do. Yeah, you got Megan Flower down there still. Landscape Victoria. Yeah, she's great. I met her at MIFGUS a couple of years ago, or probably longer than that, but she really impressed me. She's a lovely lady. So I think she's fantastic.
Yeah.
And again,
some of the people who are involved in there are just awesome people, as well as being good landscapers, so they really care about the industry.
It's a good industry, isn't it? It's a really good industry.
Yeah, I love it. And go again into like the first thing you started talking about. You mentioned the worms, got you interested in gardening and landscaping. And I've seen on your Instagram stories while you've been in lockdown, you've been doing a lot of educational gardening kind of stuff. So I've loved watching that. So do you enjoy doing that kind of teaching people kind of thing?
Well, to be honest, mate, it's those comments that kind of keep me going, because I've probably had at least a dozen or more people sort of send me messages saying like, thanks, Dan, I'm really enjoying the movies right now, and even send me videos of them out in the garden. So I'm like, look, if I've got this platform, whatever it is, and it's like, if it's an opportunity to sort of get people outside and share a bit of knowledge that I've acquired, then it doesn't really take a lot of effort, does it? So I just figure, why not? And I'll be honest, it helps me accountability too, because it's pretty tough being in lockdown, even though it's only been less than a couple of weeks. I get stir crazy, so if it helps me get back out in the garden, it's pretty miserable the last couple of days here in Canberra. It's just sort of cold and windy, but there has been some nice winter days, so it's a great opportunity for us to get outside, and I've just been sharing that around a bit as well. And I think I like to consume information that's short and to the point, so I try and create the information that's short and to the point as well, and keep it engaging. And so I do enjoy it. And I did I considered teaching at CIT at one point, our TAFE, but I just didn't have the time. Like I became aware that to teach a 2-hour class, it's really 5 hours of your time by the time you prepare for it, go in there, present the class. Like and you had to, there's a lot to it, but I definitely enjoy, I guess, sharing knowledge, and it's just another way to connect with people, I guess. So yeah, I do enjoy that for sure.
Yeah, I've found as well, like people have been messaging me, just, I don't know, it's because of the podcast or just the videos I put up, but yeah, they'll just ask certain advice about things, and I love helping them out as well. It just feels good to help someone.
Well, yeah, if you're passionate about the industry, and typically it's in your brain anyway, like it's just a 30-second text message to let them know. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Just share your knowledge. I think again, the industry is really good at that. So yeah, it's a nice way to give back. You
mentioned earlier about how cold and miserable it is at the moment in Canberra. So it's you seem to get a lot more frost there than what we do down here in Geelong. So do you have to do anything different to account for that in terms of not just plants, but is your paving any different? Like, is the frost that bad, or is it?
No, I don't think it's not like North America sort of frost lines, stuff like that. I think it's really plants. Yeah. So it is hard because we do get some, -7 mornings, and we get some pretty hefty frost. So I just have to adjust what plants we put in when. There's a lot of, there's several plants we can't put in during winter, but I always just explain to clients we'll just pop back in spring to get them in. Obviously, it really limits what we can put in here, which leads us to do probably more native gardens than I imagine Sydney would do or something like that. So it probably is mostly around the plants. Turf, obviously, your Cooch and your Sir Walters brown off for a good 5 months of the year, which is a bit of a shame. But there are some really good turfs that have been established that work for our climate. Apart from that, mate, it's just harder work in the mornings. Like it's, sometimes your stuff will be frozen for the first 2 or 3 hours of the day. Like it's just, but our frosty mornings turn into generally pretty beautiful winter days. This winter's been pretty tricky. It's been pretty wet, but apart from that, mate, it's probably just plants, I'd say, really.
So do you have any plans on growing the business or doing anything different with the business going forward?
With Revive Landscapes, I think I'm pretty happy with where it's at. I feel like I've really tried over the years to diversify, and I did have a bit of dabble in maintenance and realized that that's tough. You really got to specialize in that, I think, to do well. And I'm not sure if you do maintenance or if you've dabbled in it, but it's a whole nother beast, and it's not really something that my staff enjoy doing either. So why bother? So I think I want to focus on high-end residential construction to design, and that's what we've been able to do the last couple of years. And all the jobs I'm quoting at the moment are to design, which is fantastic. I think we're still at that point where people are having to be educated about the need for a design. So I feel like a bit of a broken record having that conversation every day, but that's okay. The good thing about design is it's generally bigger projects, so you don't need as many. And I get a lot more satisfaction out of being presented something that's different and challenging, and then it gets handed on to us to execute it as good as we can, I guess. So I'll stick to that for the landscaping business. The living walls is always going to be there. I work with Green Wall Solutions from Sydney, so every time they get an inquiry in Canberra, it kind of comes back to us. I'll keep dabbling with that, and actually I missed out on an opportunity at Floriade this year, which has just been cancelled sadly. But I was actually going to put in 8 of these units. There was going to be a 10-meter long green wall, which would have been amazing in the food court, I think, but sadly it's been cancelled. But look, I'll keep dabbling in the living walls and just see what happens with that. But also, I think while I've been looking into the green walls and indoor plants more, I've just realised that there's nowhere in Canberra that really does it well, that sells indoor plants well. So I am looking to launch a new business, probably late spring, that'll specialise in indoor plants and some garden supplies, and just basically deliver to people's doors in Canberra, because I've got to know some amazing growers throughout Sydney nurseries. So if I can get them here in Canberra, look after them and sell them on so that other people can enjoy indoor plants, I feel like that's good. And I'm going to come back to worms. I actually spoke to Sid from a company called Global Worming, which is amazing. He's basically got compost bins around restaurants in Canberra, and they put their food scraps in it. And he's got this big compost bin at the Canberra City Farm, or like compost area, and he just lives and breathes worms. So he just basically multiplies worms, sells his castings and the worm tea and stuff like that. So I'm going to sell, things like that, and wicking beds and bits and pieces. So I guess a bit of an online retail shop, which I think will be an interesting experience. We'll see how it goes, but I think there's a market here in Canberra for that. So I'll see how that plays along.
Yeah, cool. And where else are you getting most of your work for the landscape side of things? Is that through the designers that you work for?
Yeah, so that's again why I think that really worked out in my favor, is just by being proactive and approaching designers and getting on their radar. A lot of clients want 3 contractors to tender with, and we're in the mix with probably 4 or 5 different designers now in Canberra. So I've sort of thought that works pretty well. So rather than me just having one in-house designer on salary, I can sort of have different designs coming in from different people. It's hard because you are tendering against other people quite often. So yeah, a lot of work comes from designers, or obviously word of mouth, or social media. And the only paid advertising I do is through Google AdWords. but I find that they're quite often time wasters. So every time I think about sort of getting rid of it, I'm like, oh, you know, I should keep some sort of paid advertising out there. It doesn't hurt, but yeah, they are very often time wasters. But yeah, so that's why I find those designer leads are definitely the best by far for me. The
Yeah,
work that we want to
whenever
do.
someone rings me up and says, "Oh, just looking on Google and found you," I'm immediately going to get, "No, not interested," because the chances of getting a job from them is so much lower than if it's a referral from a designer or a previous customer. So
definitely agree. I think one of the best things I did too was actually just fill out on my contact form, actually just added a few more questions like, how did you hear about us? What's your budget? How soon do you need this done? Because when you get, so when you get a few inquiries, it lets you kind of look through them. And someone, if someone says, "Oh, I heard about you through my neighbor, Steph, I've got a $50,000 budget. I haven't got a design, but I'm interested." Of course, you're going to go for that one ahead of Google 1 to 5,000 or whatever. So that's been a good practice again, because we were kind of getting, it was just wasting time, like getting back to all these inquiries, because you call them, you email them, you don't hear back. It gets quite frustrating. So it's a good way to kind of cut through some of that wasted time, I think. So that was a good business move, and I'd like to probably take that a bit further. But yeah, it's helped. It's definitely helped.
And you've just joined the Canberra City Farm. So what's involved with that?
Yeah, it's cool. So like right in the guts of Canberra in Fishwick on Dairy Road, we've got this old plot that's essentially like an educational facility, which has a little bit of everything. So it's got like a little vineyard, a little orchard. We've got Sid from Global Worming doing his worm and composting. There's some chickens out there. There's some market gardens. There's some wicking beds. And it's essentially these lovely retired volunteers that run the Canberra City Farm, and they have schools in there to kind of run them through workshops. We had some people down from Water Ups do a presentation on their wicking beds. So they do various bits and pieces. And, going back to what I said at the start, with the interest in veggie gardening, I never really thought that was a feasible career choice, but I feel like it can still be a hobby. So I wouldn't mind being more involved with them and just learning about that sort of stuff. Because eventually another sort of, business dream would actually be to create a bit of a urban agriculture kind of farm here in Canberra where we can sell produce to Canberrans. And I think there's definitely a lot of scope for that, but I'm not naive enough to think that that's not going to be a lot of work. So if I can work with people like Canberra City Farm and, maybe engage their resources, and they might be able to help lobby the government for some funding and whatnot. But for now, it's just a fun little place to be involved in. Like they're a really lovely group of people, and I think they're doing some really positive things by educating people about growing your own produce, essentially, which is something we should all try and do.
Yeah, and that can be something that you can specialise in for your business as well, because I'm pretty sure Greg from Outside Space said something there. He does a lot of edible gardens, and they're not exactly what you think of an edible garden as. So he does the other stuff as well, but you can specialise in that kind of market. So then you're niching down into that.
There's a really good company in Canberra called the Sustainable Gardener. So it's Walter, and he employs underprivileged staff. He's got about 8 employees, I think, but they do basically do that. They basically just, he does maintenance, but they do specialize in organic gardening and vegetable gardening and stuff like that as well. He does quite well. So yeah, that niche has kind of been ticked. But I don't know how you feel about this, but this is a trick, I think, with landscaping, isn't it? Like I talk to friends of mine that are concreters or something, and they're just killing it because they're just focusing on just doing slabs, bond beams, driveways. They get in with their truck, they knock it over, get paid, get out, and here we are just chipping away, like carrying literally probably $200,000 worth of equipment around, and then just trying to make a buck. So I try not to get caught up in that because I do enjoy what I do. But niching yourself is definitely important. But this landscape world is just huge. So yeah, I do dabble in veggie gardens. I always try and include them in the gardens where I can, and talk to people about wicking beds versus conventional beds, and try and find a spot for a compost bin. And so that's kind of, I guess, how I try and keep that involved in the standard designs that we do.
I had a guy ring me up, like an apprenticeship officer, just checking out how one of my apprentices was going, and he'd qualified, so that's how long it had been since they'd rang. He said, "I just need to fill this out. Can you just let me know what sort of tools you provide for him?" I said, "There's a lot of tools." He goes, "I just need some information." I said, "Well, we do what a carpenter does, bricklayer, concreter, electrician, plumber, horticulturalist, turf supply. Like we do all that kind of stuff. So
It was.
what do you reckon? What sort of tool would it be? I said, just put down a pencil. So, yeah, because it is like you need a bit of everything. So.
It's huge. I like that Ash was talking about his fancy sack of tours and his $3,000 kit, which I imagine would be amazing. But I was envious. But I also like that he said 100 grand buys a little wheelbarrow. So I thought that was quite clever. So I don't know, but like it's great. It is great to have all those skills, and there's skills that will stay with you for life. And I really do enjoy passing those on. And that's probably one of the most satisfying things in business. You mentioned before you've had a guy for 6 years. I've got Gav who's been with me for about 8 years, I think. So we learned the trade together. And it's really satisfying to see him pass that on to other apprentices we've had during the time. And Shane, another one who's been with me for about 4 or 5 years now, I think. You know, basically I sort of helped teach Gav teaches Shane, and we've got a new apprentice now, and it's just going down the line, which is really satisfying. But it's an interesting industry, that's for sure.
Yeah, I reckon being small, you can have I don't know. I've never been in a big company, so I don't know what they'd be like. But you're going to have those better relationships because you're such more of a tight unit. So the guy who's been with me for 6 years, Zocky, he's been with me basically since I restarted the business. So he's seen what it was like when I got back into it. We were doing, basic. We'd do steppers down the side of the house, a border of plants around the backyard, turf in the middle, and that was it. Just the worst jobs, and it'd be $5,000. And now our average is about $100,000 on jobs. Yep. And he's worked with me all the way up there. And then I've also got Dally, who's the guy that's been with me 4 years. And he and Zocky became best mates just while working together, and was in each other's bridal party. So
you spend so much time. You spend so much time with your colleagues, don't you? Yeah, my old apprentice Josh, he moved to Adelaide, and that's the only reason he kind of left the business, I like to think. But he's now managing $3 million projects or something, which is amazing. But I'm going to his wedding next year, and he's definitely consider a very good friend of mine. And again, it's another perk of business. I hear people talk. I mean, I gotta be careful what I say here, but in Canberra, we're a very high public service based environment. So there's a lot of government work here, and I have to reflect because I'm pretty happy going to work. Of course, there's days when it's tricky, but like the people I work with directly and indirectly are always really refreshing. And I work in a share office as well, which is probably a bit unique for a landscaper. So I work at a place called Keep Co, and there's about 20 other businesses that work out of there. So I get to hang out with other business owners, which is really good for morale and motivation. But the people I know that work in a public service environment or something, it's often the opposite. I find like it's quite a hostile environment, very sort of toxic and political kind of stuff that. And I'm sure it's not everyone, but I definitely hear those stories, and I just take a big sigh of relief and just how I would not last in that environment. Like, I'm sure you wouldn't either. We just get so frustrated, I think. And so I'm extremely thankful to have those real relationships that you bond with your staff and even other landscapers and everything. It's once again, it's a fantastic industry. So very appreciative.
Have you got any hobbies outside of landscaping?
Yeah, I try and spend more time doing that than landscaping. I think I'm getting better at that. Definitely still into the music. So I collect records. I try and go to live gigs when I can, which has been frustrating, obviously, over the last year and a half. Every time you buy a ticket to something, it gets cancelled. But anyway, it's a small problem. Music, photography. So I dabble in a bit of photography, which is a great interest. I think that's a really good thing to help sort of flex a bit of creativity, which is good. Go hiking, camping. I've sort of turned my work van into a camper van, so that's been fun to kind of take that off road and enjoy that. They're probably the main things. Obviously, things like planting the veggie garden, I still consider that a hobby. That probably wraps up the main things, I guess. What about you, mate? What are you doing when you're not landscaping?
There's nothing I can do when I'm not landscaping. That's
live and breathe.
I don't have any time for anything else. I've got 3 kids.
Yeah.
I spend a bit of time with them, but honestly, I don't have. I like watching American sports, like American football, like the NFL. So I'll get up at 3 o'clock in the morning when that's on, and watch that.
Wow. Dedicated.
Honestly, there's not much else I have an interesting life with this. There's St Kilda Footy Club as well. That can be painful at times.
And how do you go battling that balance for yourself?
Not a problem at all, because I love doing I love
You love
landscaping. So it's that's the thing. People say,
I
you
can tell.
can't think about work when you're at home, but
Yeah,
if it's not a problem, then there's not a problem
Yeah.
thinking about it. So
I agree. And I think that's something that, I said before, I work 45 hours if I can, but really, like, it's the hours go out the window when you run a business. Like, it's not, you don't keep track of your hours. You can be thinking about work in the middle of the night, or you can take Friday lunchtime off for the rest of the afternoon. Like, it's just part of your life, isn't it? It's not, you're not clocking in, clocking out, which I do, sometimes you can become a bit resentful about that. You're like, oh, I wish I could just go to work and come home. But I'm similar to you. Like, when you enjoy it, it's and you're passionate about it even more so, then it's not really a chore, I don't think, which is nice.
yeah, and you appreciate it more when you see other people who are just dreading going to work and then talking about people that they're bitching about at work.
Yes,
Who could be
even though they're probably
bothered
earning double what we're earning, doesn't bother me.
they're probably on there double, like $50,000 a year or something crazy.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. we laugh.
But I've got like, people say you have flexibility for working for yourself, which is true to a point, but there's also times where there's zero flexibility, because if something has to get done and your staff are sick, then you've got to get it done. But I can take time off. Like, I take time off to go to assemblies at the kids' school or something, just basic stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
So, I don't know.
And you've obviously worked hard on that too. I think that's probably a mistake I see a lot of business owners make, where they don't really let go of control. So they want to be on control of the job site, control of the quoting, control of the whole aspect of the business. And I just feel sorry for them, because I've been there and it burns you out. You can't do it. So I'm the same as you. I can take a week or two off if I want, really. I would have to line things up, but I appreciate that. Like, there's obviously a lot of times you can't take off, but you have to be there. You have to write the quotes and go to the consults and do a lot of those things. And I've tried over the years to train other people to do that. But as the business owner, quite often there's some things you just have to do, I've learned, and that's fine too. But there is a bit of flexibility, I think. And a mate of mine runs a building business with kids as well, and I know that it works well for their family, a lot more than it would if he was working in, say, the public service or something like that, potentially. So there's definitely pros and cons. And I do remind people of that if they are looking to start their own business, because you can't just think about the money. I think one of your other ones I was listening to, I can't remember who it was now. He's done a lot of shows. It was an hour and a half podcast. It was a lot of shows.
Brent Reed.
Yeah, he was. No, that was right. He was interesting, but it's just, he was saying that I think you were both joking about the fact that he went into business to try and make more money. 15 years on, he's still waiting for that to happen. But it's not about the money, is it? Like, it's there's a lot more to it. But it is a reality check, and it's a tricky one when you want to pay your staff more money, or it's just, again, I think particularly in Canberra, where we have public service wages that are quite high, and compared to the hard work that we do as the hard physical work that we do as landscapers, it's tough to compete with. It's pretty tough.
I don't have a problem with, like, whenever I put prices up, because landscaping is not something you can do till you're 70 and retire. So you should be getting paid more, because you can only do it for a certain amount of time.
Well, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts actually on your price pointing, because I still struggle with this. Sometimes you might win the job and they're not looking at other quotes, but more often than not, there's other quotes in the mix, right? So I have a lot of people tell me, like, oh, you need to put your rates up so you can earn more money, and you got to look at your overheads and this and that. And to me, like, that's fantastic, but unless the whole industry is putting their rate up together, like, I'm missing out on jobs. So I think there's a fine line between putting your rates up and winning work. And I don't know if you've sort of found a formula for that, but I'd be super interested if anyone's figured out that how to kind of earn a bit more money but still win the work. I think it's
now's a good time for that to be happening, is people putting prices up. I agree, because everyone's got so much work. And I agree. When I lose out on a job to someone else, I'm happy about that, because I know that then they might put their price up because they know that they won at that price. So and it's so much easier to put prices up when you've got a shitload of work. So
I agree.
It's easy for someone to say, oh, you need to put the prices up, but it depends what situation you're in. If you're desperate for work, you're not going to be putting your price up a lot.
That's right. Well, I hope that does change over the years. And we can start to sort of charge a bit more competitive in the market, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a tricky thing that I'm finding at the moment, being so booked out so far in advance. Any changes I want to make to pricing I'm not gonna feel that for 9 or 12 months, because all those other jobs are already quoted up to then. So that's a bit of a trap. That you can get into.
Got to be careful too, because material costs can go up as they are at the moment with timber and steel, and whether you requote or whether you have to absorb that. Like, it's complicated. And another thing I'd be interested in your opinion on actually is charging for quotes. I think you might have touched on that in one of your podcasts, the fact that you do charge for quotes. I think that's something that I'd like to see the industry do as well.
Yeah, I don't do it yet, but it's something I would like to do. But also a lot of the quotes I do are direct from designers, or so if they're from someone, if they're from like a referral, I wouldn't charge for it, because you know that they're
that's right,
a quality quote. But I think it's King's Landscaping down here in Geelong. Pretty sure it's on their website. They charge, I think they've got, I don't know if it's like $200 or something, or $160 for a quote. It's written on their website. Or it was when I looked a few years ago anyway. And I think that's a great idea. And
me too. And I guess,
and people are worried about not getting quotes, not getting jobs because they're charging for quotes. And I would say Kings is probably they're booked out the furthest in advance.
Well, you're in that position now, aren't you? I guess too. Like, I think for me, it would just help me feel a little less resentful about the quotes that you go to that just waste your time. And I do get it. I should say, I understand. Like, if I'm trying to get work done around the house, like re-roof or something, like, you don't know how much it costs. And I feel like if a company said to me, look, I'm going to charge you $100, $200 to come out and do that quote, if you go ahead with the job, we'll absorb that into the cost of the invoice, I'd be okay with that, I think. But I think it's hard when, as an industry, it's kind of been the norm to just do quotes for free, and then that's become an expectation. And I know that if I started doing it here in Canberra, I think I'd be one of the first landscape construction businesses to be doing that. So it's kind of that. Yeah, is it right or wrong? I don't know. I don't think there's not an answer to that. I think you just try and adjust, I guess. But it's a tricky one. But I feel like there's probably benefits to be had from trying to charge for quotes. I think for me, I guess my vetting, instead of doing that, that's where I sort of hand on to designers. Like, I'll try and have a phone conversation, and sometimes even a site visit, but I'll generally try and get the people to spend the $250, $300 with the landscape architect for their consultation and their time, and use that as a bit of a vetting process. And that seems to work okay, but clearly I'm still not getting paid for the day it might take me to put together a quote. And when you get the email back saying you missed out, it's still a bit disheartening for sure. You're like, well, I just wasted, $500 of my time.
Yeah, but there's one thing to say, that's just all part of it, but it's still annoying. But I think that's where, if you don't charge for it and you're wanting to cut down on the time you're wasting, I think doing writing down a sort of script that you would of questions that you ask, so you can pre-qualify the client on the phone beforehand. So you can say, ask what sort of work they want to get done, and then you say, we've done that sort of work before, and it costs 50 to 70,000. So how does that does that kind of fit within your budget? That could be.
I'll do that. I agree, and I do that more often when I'm doing consults on site too. I used to be a bit shy about asking for budgets or throwing rough numbers out there. I was always tentative and I don't want to scare them off, but I'm actually completely the opposite now. To say, look, based on the yard this size and the work you're describing, it's probably going to be about 50,000 at least. My gut feeling is that roughly what you're looking at, and that's a good way that they can be like, yeah, that sounds about right. Like, all right, well, here's the process. Or they might say, oh, actually, we've only got about $10,000, and I can say, okay, well, we really need to just look at what we can do for that, or maybe we say it's not feasible. So yeah, I'm definitely getting better at that. I think that comes from the confidence, not having urgency in your sort of your quoting process, I guess, not feeling like you're going to run out of work too, which just comes in time, I guess.
Yeah, and also when I've been doing it in the past, I'm trying to give them a ballpark figure as soon as you go out there and before you've even got your tape measure out. Like, I've done that once, and they said, how much do you reckon this would cost? I said, it might be 30,000, I guess. And then I went and quoted, and it was 60,000. So I hate doing that kind of thing. Like, I know. I'd rather say, I reckon it's 60, and then it was 30. Because I'd rather undersell and over deliver. Because I hate asking for more money or anything. I don't like, because I feel like most clients preconceived ideas of what a tradesman's like is that they're trying to rip them off at any chance they get.
Yes.
And I
and sadly that happens.
I don't want to be stereotypical tradie, so I try to go complete opposite. So that's why I hate giving prices beforehand, but sometimes it's better off to do it.
I appreciate that. I think it's really hard too, because I know that some of the landscape architects I work with, it's really hard for them as well, because obviously they've got to try and design to a budget. But like you and I just said, we've been doing this for years and we still get it completely wrong sometimes. So it's really hard for them to, do a design and give it to a client and say, look, I think this should be 50 grand. And then they pass it on to 3 landscapers and we're all like 70, 80, 90,000 or something. And it's disheartening. You feel like everyone sort of wasted their time, but it's just, I don't know, it's a hard one, isn't it? It's really hard. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know about this Geelong sort of, do you feel like there is, I mean, you mentioned you work on sort of $100,000 projects. I feel like that's a pretty good area to be in. They're the kind of projects I like. You're able to do sort of, was that hard for you to get to that point where you were doing sort of back-to-back projects of that sort of substance?
Yeah, it was where when I started back into landscaping in 2015, these are the jobs we're doing now are the ones I wanted to be working on. So I set about targeting for these ones. And that was just by getting known within the industry. And then when you get those jobs, you do a great job with that one, so that then the designer wants to work with you again, and the clients have got friends who have got similar kind of income who they get their landscaping done and want to get you to do it. So there's way more than enough work for in that market down here. There's
awesome.
All sorts, because there's and so many Melbourne designers doing stuff in Geelong as well. So like people are paying 25 grand for a design for in Geelong. So not to me, my designs aren't that expensive.
No. $250.
You get what you pay for. So,
it's an interesting world. But I think my designers are, it can range from 3,000 to 7,000, and even that, a lot of people are kind of like, oh shit, like that's a lot more than I thought. And you can kind of tell straight away when you mention that price bracket whether they're going to go for it or not. But like I said, I get it. I get the people see it as a cost that could go towards the landscaping, and you've got to kind of argue, no, like this is an investment you need to make before we can do the project. And it's a careful way to kind of articulate that message to clients, I think, and hope that they absorb it. And also, I think the best thing I've done in recent years is just acknowledge that some people are going to get that and most people probably won't, and that's okay. There's other people they can work with that, will be able to service them. But that's just, again, where I'm at the moment. It just feels better. It feels better to just preach the same sort of message and accept that it's not going to be for everyone, but it's the way that I want to run the business, because I think it is the best process.
Yeah, definitely is. And not everyone's your client. So the average design down here would be like the average good design that we work on is probably 6,000 to 10,000 for the design. And whereas like I've done designs where I charge say $1,500, and people say, oh geez, that's a bit expensive. I'm not want to pay that for a design. So
not the amount of time you got to put into it, that's for sure.
Yeah, you can't just realize that there's not everyone's your client. And there's there's landscapers who work in the top end, and there's landscapers who are just starting out. So there's a landscaper for every client. So it just might not be you. So just don't get too stressed about it.
Definitely agree. It takes a while to get there and just be comfortable with that, but that's what I reckon. Yeah.
All right. I can't thank you enough for coming on today, Dan. I really enjoyed this chat. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, mate. No, really nice to meet you. Thanks for being here.